right? Good morning, everyone. Officially Friday, April the 14th. Funny was just as I was coming on, I was talking about the dialogue in my head, and I've had dialogue going on forever. And Jacob, my son, said to me one day about inner dialogue, and I'm like, yeah. And then I found out that not everyone has inner dialogue. I was like, I know. I was like, really doesn't I know. We are special when we have inner dialogue. And so last night I had an opportunity to speak to Leo, who is I call him my son, right? He's did not come from my loins, but he is still my son, and he does not have inner dialogue. So I said to him, what is that like to not have? I know, what's that like to not have inner dialogue? And he said, so we talked a little bit about it, and he goes, I can't imagine all of that chatter in your head. And I'm like, well, you just ask it to quiet. That's right. Either speak loud or shut up. Like that's sometimes what I say. You have to no murmuring, no mumbling aloud. All right, good morning. Yesterday we talked a little bit about putting the prosperity idea to work, which is using Robert A. Russell's work. And I also shared some metaphysical principles from my text from my bachelor's degree. And so we're going to kind of go along that same space and place. And so today's topic, the starting topic is happiness is a state of mind. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of us know that, right? That we have different states of mind. I think probably the first time I heard this truly was years ago at a Tony Robbins seminar, and he was talking about changing his state. And if he changed his state of mind, then the outcome was different. And for him, he had different principles or different ways to change his state. So one of them is if you're feeling less than a higher vibration, you can actually change your physical state by doing things like dancing, or you can sing, or some sort of movement, walking out in nature. But you can also change your state with breath work, meditation, lighting a candle, lighting incense. Like there are so many different tools that you can use to change your state. Often it makes just making the decision of, oh, I'm in awareness of this state of mind that I'm in, this state of mind that I'm feeling is not an empowering state. And in fact, the words that I use are, I'm in my primal state. I'm in fight, flight, freeze or fawn, right? Or I'm anxious, or I'm worried, or I'm, any one of those things. And so for me personally, it's okay, I'm in awareness of the thing. The second thing is to not judge it. It's not good or bad. It's just the isness of the situation. And I can make a decision. I can choose to be grumpy for the rest of the day, or choose to be grumpy for like 10 minutes, or choose to be sad, and that probably as a teenager, like I was introduced to this concept way back then, more difficult as a teenager. Throughout my life, it's been difficult at different times. However, with the practice of making the decision, or the practice of choosing. And so if I find myself in a lower density state for longer than what I want, I will ask myself through curiosity, isn't that interesting that I'm choosing to feel, and then whatever I choose to feel for this length of period of time, what is the truth in this? So I don't ask why, because we go back into our right personality, we go back into our brain, and we do a magical search like Google does, and it comes up with some sort of story as to why. And it's often associated with our past, often associated with false beliefs. So rather than asking why, we can ask, well, what's the truth in this? Or what am I resisting being, doing, or having? Because there is a purpose from the state of your mind. There's a purpose why you're in that state. And so that's why we don't want to judge it, right? We want to just, but it's like, oh, there's a purpose as to why I'm feeling this longer than what I want to feel this. And it's not because you suck, right? So it's, how else to look at it is to like, okay, well, how do I want to feel? I think that's the biggest. So we know that we don't want to be angry or depressed or worry or doubt or fear, But then it's making a decision. Okay, well then how do you want to feel? And once you have that decision, then you can use different tools to bring you into that. So one of the tools that my metaphysical textbook talks about is that happiness. So talking about specifically about happiness being a state of mind, right? And so they shared here, the thoughts that occupy our mind each and every day of our lives either produces feelings of happiness or despair or fall somewhere in between. So I think the first piece of it is just to make that acceptance, right? We can just say, yeah, absolutely. This is, we know this. We've accepted this as a premise. The second one is to, if you can accept that belief that you can experience happiness in your life in your mental atmosphere, you need to believe in yourself first. And so we start with that. What parts of you do you not believe in? So there you might believe that you're not allowed to be happy, right? You might have believed that you don't deserve to be happy. You might not have ever been happy, so you actually don't know what happiness feels like. I had the toughest time with the word joy. I have a friend, her name is Laura, and she just emits joy. She's just joyful. And I've often said to her, what does that feel like? And she's like, well, you know. And I'm like, no, actually, I don't know. I have no clue what joy feels like. And so what I started to see was that joy wasn't something that I could connect with. And it wasn't that I wasn't good enough or didn't have the value, or my belief system, my false belief was there must be something horribly wrong with me, and that's why I can't feel joy. But what I came to recognize was that my natural state of being is that of peace and prosperity. My natural state of being is Zen. And so I think that's probably maybe what other people might call joy. I call this like, right? And so, but we just never talked about joyfulness and joy filled and all of those things, right? And so, and thank you, Sherry, for your comment. Don't be sad. Don't feel sad. It's all good. But I really judged myself for a long time that I couldn't feel this feeling of what I thought was because I was broken. So one of the pieces that I started to accept was, what if I wasn't broken? What if I wasn't meant to feel joy? And what if I was feeling joy, but I didn't know I was feeling joy because it had never been expressed and never been talked about? So I kind of went down this rabbit hole of months of like, what does joy feel? Is this joy? Is this joy? And, and people would say, well, like when your kids were born, weren't you just filled full of this like love that was overwhelming and joy? And I said, no. And I didn't. But I when I looked at my kids, I was like, this is so cool that I was part of this creation. And the first thought that came through to me was, thank you so much for choosing me as your mom. Like I just had this very different look and felt like I, had this responsibility, and I was excited about being a mom. I also was in awareness that their dad is what was making the great father at first when they were little, and that my role with them was by the time, like when they were 15 to older, that I had something really, really significant to contribute, right? And part of that certainly was my childhood, not experiencing unconditional love, yearning for unconditional love. So making maybe some poor choices in my life with men, right? Looking for this unconditional peace. I share all of this with you because I'm using the word happiness right now, and that might not even resonate with you. So you need to use a word that resonates with you in this when we're talking about this. So, but first of all, we need to always believe in ourselves, and believe, of course, not in just the ego id I, which is an important component, but the divine within us, that fractal energy of divine energy, and having faith in that. Oh, excuse me. Diane, I haven't expressed this to you. When energy starts to move in the group, I start to burp. So Yes, welcome to my life. So, it's really big. I burp really big. Sometimes I can just be, it can be little burps until after I'm done the call. So today, not so much. Today it's going to be big burps. Okay. There we go. So belief in yourself. So someone here is having a difficult time with that word. We can talk about it after if you'd like. And having faith in the divine, the fractal energy of who you are. So when we accept this as a part of ourselves, it is, I think, I'll use the word easier. It's been easier to have that emit the frequency of what, of your higher power, of this fractal energy of God. Now, I think each one of us will have our own definition, our own words, of what emitting the frequency of your higher power is. So for me, I would say emitting the frequency of love, emitting the frequency of sacred love, to be actually even more specific, emitting the frequency of acceptance, emitting the frequency of peace. I would say now I understand what joy is, but I'm not sure if it's the joy that everyone else feels, and I stopped comparing, but I'm sharing that part of my story with you, right? So if we look at and accept that we are this God mind, we are a fractal energy of divine energy, then we start to settle into the truth of who we are. And as you settle into the truth of who you are, then we kind of access to this state of mind. In particular, we're talking about happiness today. But that word, again, use a word that expresses for you of the highest frequency. I think the disservice that's happened is in our world. As a human being, we've been conditioned or programmed that happiness is outside of ourselves, or that love is outside of you, right? Or that joy. And so we are programmed to spend a lifetime of looking for something or someone that will, quote unquote, make you happy. And so then, of course, then there's disappointment because no one can actually make you happy but you. It's like no one can make you sad or angry. It's a choice. It's a decision. And that can be a difficult pill to swallow if you've grown up in an environment where there was always blame. It's always somebody else's fault that someone is going through something. So if we can move into the state of acceptance of self, of I'm responsible for everything, including my own happiness, including my own joy, my own love, my own self-acceptance, my own self-esteem, my own self-confidence. And we no longer look outside of ourselves for the validation of the value of who you are. So we're not looking outside of ourselves for belonging. We're not looking outside of ourselves for confidence. We're not looking outside of ourselves for anything. We go back into, for me, it would be, I would go back into a meditative state and remind myself of being this divine energy, of this fractal energy of God. And so what's interesting with this particular chapter of the textbook is that the statement here, happiness can only be found, and you all know how I feel about words like only. So, but happiness can be found in discovering the purpose of your soul at any given moment of your life. And for that, there was part of that rang true to me. I don't think it's the only way, but certainly I sensed that. I think that's part of the challenge and the conditioning of the human species, is that we're looking, right? We are actually looking for someone to fulfill us if we're unaware of how we can fulfill our own purpose, right? And we've talked here that your purpose might be different than your career, but your purpose is tied to those secret thoughts, the desires that you have, right? The one that, yes, we're all doing something in order for us to create revenue so that we can live the life that we want and the lifestyle that we want. And if you were, granted And I always use the number 244 million, dollars, and your family was taken care of, and you were doing everything you wanted to do, you did all the traveling. And what would you do? That's usually the desire piece, right? The one that we don't talk about, the one that people like, how are you going to monetize that? I don't know. What if I didn't have to worry about monetizing it? And then, so when we can look at this and go, so that might be part of your purpose. And so if we're living our life in purpose, on purpose, with purpose, and in this particular incident or example, they're saying happiness is found in discovering the purpose of your soul at any given moment. We can just settle into that and emit the frequency of, wouldn't it be cool if that was your life? And we don't have to worry about how it's going to unfold right away, because the how will come when it's meant to come. The first step is in accepting that it's possible. It's possible for you to live your purpose, right? Even if you're not sure how that's going to happen. And we don't have to worry about how to monetize. That's the mind fuck. Sorry, Diana, didn't tell you I swear on here. My apologies. But that's the piece of it that can be confusing, because we're again conditioned to like go out and get a job and get paid and make sure you get paid what you're worth, right? And this is tricky, isn't it? Because I don't know, I think we're all worth $1 million or $1 billion or $1 trillion for what our services are. And so that is a really tricky statement of charge what you're worth or your value, because how do you actually, place a value on that? And I'm not talking like, well, I guess I probably am, like, you esoterically. I mean, I understand that we're all in business, right? And there's something that we need to charge that. However, if we get caught up in ensuring that we're charging what we're worth, I think that can be a bit of a spiral, right? And we've talked about that here. And so each one of us will need to come to a place in a space in our hearts of settling into what that means for us. So in order to find happiness, we want to turn our thoughts to our soul, and from your soul, it will come the feelings that direct you intuitively to the fruition of your happiness. So let me say that again. To find happiness, turn your thoughts to your soul, and from your soul will come the feelings that direct you intuitively to the fruition of happiness. So we tune into ourselves for happiness, right? And then we're directed to take inspired action that will bring us happiness. It's a really cool thing when you start following your intuition, right? Following the connection between your mind, your heart, and your gut, right? This I call it the triune effect, right? Mind, heart, and gut. In Sign of the Cross, right? It's still a kind of a triune, mind, body, spirit. That could be, another way of saying it. It's meant to work together, right? We're not meant to just be in our heads. We're not meant to just be in our heart, and we're not meant to just be in our intuition, right? We're actually meant to incorporate that, right? And so we can incorporate it in whatever symbolism works for you. So how do we move into a state of happiness if we're in an emotional state of non-happiness? This will be probably no surprise to anyone here. The universal law of receiving, right, would be one. We could talk about it in terms of using your affirmations, right? Positive affirmations, gratitude specifically. That's what we're talking about. So we move into the space of, I am so happy and grateful now that. Right? Remember, when you use words that resonate, A, they have to resonate with you, and B, they're words of a higher vibration, and you speak them out loud. You can write them down as well. It's important, though, to speak them out loud, because sound, right, travels faster than light. And so that saying it out loud, it has a vibration or frequency to it. It's an internal dialogue. It has a frequency and vibration to it as well. If you write it down visually, it has a frequency to it. So in a perfect world, you would do all three. And sometimes that's not possible, right? So for me, if I'm limited in a time factor, I'll just say it out loud. And so people think often will think that the simplicity of a gratitude statement, that it has no long-term or no positive effects, which there's so much evidence to dispute that. And it's such a simple tool that's often overlooked because it's such a simple tool. So, Emily, I saw your face and I'm thinking the dog probably farted. Sorry. I love it, right? I was like, oh, I know exactly what happened. Sorry, everyone, I had to like, because I saw her face. I was like, oh my God, the dog just farted. Love it. She's choking. Oh my goodness. And so we are in a space of continually giving thanks for little things like that, even the laughter, right, of the puppy farting. Because anyone who has a dog knows, like, those are bad. Those are bad, right? So if you practice continually the act of gratitude, there's a vibration, of course, and it will bring more happiness into your life. It can be that simple, right? Other pieces of creating happiness is to think about what spaces and places provide you with a vibration of happiness, right? Like if I'm having a really rough day, I'll just go to a walking trail, and I don't even have to go for a walk necessarily, but I just need to be around trees. We have in our backyard, we have lots of trees. And so sometimes I can just go sit on the picnic with a picnic table in our backyard underneath a tree, and I'm good. Or sun, right? So it's simple things for me. Cuddles with my cat, that will work, right? Cuddles with dogs. There are a lot of different ways. And again, means that you can, excuse me, use different tools that work for you, right? And it might be a tool only that works for you and hasn't worked for anybody else, and it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. What's most important is, does it work for you? So in this textbook, it's really interesting because they have steps for happiness, which I thought, well, right, this is the stuff that we should be teaching in school, right? So here are some of the steps. Number one, become sensitive to your spiritual nature. So it's just right awareness. Let the higher power within you direct you. I would say that for me in particular, and I don't think I'm alone, this has been one of the most difficult things, to surrender into the fractal energy of divine self, to surrender into the God part of myself, and allow the divine within me to make the decisions as to the direction of where I'm going. I struggle with that a lot because of the control, right? And for me, the control was the safety and security that I required growing up in an alcoholic home, because it wasn't safe, or the feeling was that there wasn't safe and there was no security in that. So feeling like it had to be my way or no way. And so when I find myself in that state of mind, I am reminded to go back into and into surrender, right? Surrender into the God mind within me. The second, to thine own self be true, is the quote in here. Realize that your true self, what your true self is, and what it seeks to accomplish and live. And meditating each day opens your intuitive channels to the knowledge and purpose of your true self. Okay. How many of you feel like you can't follow your true self or your true path or your inner wisdom, your purpose, right? The thing that you desire more than anything else, because it would be selfish. And a lot of women grew up in, we are meant to nurture. And if we grew up in an environment where we watched our mothers take care of, like with a family, and or take care of the husbands, or sacrifice their decisions or what they desired to, or be in relationship. My mom, it was like, she certainly had an opinion behind closed doors, right? But when my mom and dad came out of the bedroom, it was like my dad was like, this is what we're doing, right? And so I grew up in an environment where I was like, does that really what my mom want? Or is she directing things in the background? I'm wasn't really sure. But I certainly saw what I thought were sacrifices that my mom were making for my dad. And I really resisted that, getting into relationship with men. Like, I'm not doing what you want me to do, right? You can, if you want to be with me, you have to do what I want to do, right? So my pendulum swung like the complete opposite. What we're looking for is to thy own self be true. To recognize the meaning of happiness is different for each person. So your definition of happiness, different than mine. This is so important when we're in relationship with other people. If we have a spouse or a partner, right, and you just want them to be happy, well, you can't control that. And their definition of happy might be completely different than your definition of happy. And their meaning of happiness might be different. And their way to achieve happiness or to receive happiness might be different. And so we then go into this next acceptance piece, right? This is probably my favorite. Happiness is living a particular lifestyle that fits the purpose of your soul, right? So happiness is living a particular lifestyle that fits the purpose of your soul. And when I read that, I was so resonant, with that, because my lifestyle has been different through different times. And I made the error in thinking I was at my most peaceful state when I didn't have the revenue that I had building my $1 million company. And I made the error in thinking it was because that I wasn't creating the revenue, right? So I guess tying it together, I had a false hidden belief that when I had money, I wasn't happy. And when I didn't have money, I was happier. And as I started to unpack that, I realized that the money had nothing to do with it at all. That's where the false belief came from, but that it was the inner cause, which is me. And that I was tying together, right, which is what our brain does, our neural pathways do, as tying together something that actually didn't belong together. So when I could separate that money had nothing to do with happiness, and that I was free, I was liberated to create the lifestyle that I want with my soul purpose. And at different times, it will require different types of revenue. So as I move into this desire to build a nonprofit agency and to have an academy in Costa Rica and make that a retreat center, that requires a lot more currency. And so I can open myself up to a higher cash flow, higher revenue, because I'm living my purpose, right? When I had the Curves franchises, I was living on purpose, and that's why the revenue was there, right? As I I found myself moving away from living on purpose and focusing solely on making money. Everything crashed around me, right? The moment I went to, I need to make money doing this, things went sideways. And it's not money's fault, right? Money isn't evil, but it was the way that I was programmed to think about money, the association that I created with working hard and making money. And so I think that always it's important, because I can't go to my bank and say, can I coach you on the universal laws and you pay my mortgage? It won't work that way. And so money is a part of our world and of our life. And so what relationships do we have it? Whatever your soul tells you is what will bring you happiness. Whatever your soul tells you is what will bring you happiness. Place that in your heart and establish it firmly there. Only one step beneath the presence of God in its importance to you. This will influence your daily behavior. So whatever your soul tells you is what will bring you happiness. And we can change that word happiness to prosperity, right? Or love. You can change the word happiness to any word that resonates with you, right? Is whatever your soul tells you. I really love when I worked with the word prosperity. I really loved this when it came to that prosperity piece, or abundance again, or wealth, whatever word. I think it's so important because if we're following our soul, things will unfold as they are, right? And if we're experiencing a Groundhog Day, then we need to change our behavior, right? It means Groundhog Days are those opportunities for okay, I'm trying the same thing over and over again. I'm getting the same result. So my soul has a calling, but the soul will guide you even if you're meant to have a couple of Groundhog Days. But it's your unconscious false beliefs, right? So your soul is saying, hey, I'm over here, Ranchelle. And it's our unconscious false beliefs that takes us on the same path. So it's like I'm driving on the path and there's an obstacle. And so then I, move the obstacle and then I find myself, okay, I'm still the same path, same obstacle. Then we need to stop and go, okay, this isn't working, right? So I know what I'm meant to do, but the path that I'm on is not the way to go. So it's like literally stopping and going, okay, I'm going to keep that obstacle there, meaning I'm not going to go over it. I'm not going to bust through it. I'm just going to look at that and go, what parts of me need to change? That was the hardest thing for me. What parts of me need to change? And so I was clearly guided as to what parts for me needed to be different, right? Needed to change. And one of them, because I was so good at, this is years ago, I was so good at manipulation, and I didn't realize that I was manipulating or trying to manipulate everything and everyone around me. And so when I thought, okay, that causes, right, that is the cause of every effect that I have. So what would it be like to not manipulate? So for you, it's just to, if you're having your Groundhog Days, go, okay, you make a decision. I'm not doing this again. And you can ask, your higher power for help. I'm not doing this again and I need to change. And so the environment can't change until I change. So make it clear as day what I need to change, right? So I was like, be specific, be clear, be kind, and be quick. Because I was tired of my Groundhog Day. And it was very specific. It was very clear. It was very quick. Like within 2 days, I think 2 people that I love very much said, why you're trying to manipulate me? And I was like, I am not. The first one was Rob, I think it was. And the second one was Jacob, my son. You're trying to manipulate me. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I've heard that word twice. Right? And I was like, I'm not. And then I went back and went, holy shit. Oh, I am so trying to manipulate you to get what I want. So to accept that shadow self of myself, right, as being a master manipulator, right? And it was insidious, which is why I didn't know. All right. Well, I could spend another hour with all of you talking about this, but I shall thank you so much for staying with me. Mwah. I love you all, and I will see you tomorrow, right? Same time, same place. Have a good one.